Welcome, Anand, Karunesh, sir. It's so glad we are having you on the Pyramid Alley platform today.
Thank you.
Thank you for your immediate acceptance for our invitation.
My pleasure, my honor.
So, dear friends, many of you would have known about him. So, he is the author of the book, A Thousand Seas of Joy. So, today, being Independence Day, I wish everyone a happy Independence Day. Sir, as I spoke to you last time, so I'm happy that you were accepted August 15th for your session, and it is just so happy that you took up a topic very similar to this day for inner freedom. Thank you, sir. Thank you. So, dear friends, Anand Karunesh ji, he was born in India and working in US as a professor. He had his first spiritual awakening, which he calls as Zen awakening, at the age of 19. This opened up a world of expanded spiritual awareness. After spending his life meditating and growing in self-discovery for more than 35 years, Anand Karunesh ji has published his book filled with delightful conversations with goddesses Lakshmi and Saraswati. Though believing it may be a little difficult, but after reading the book, you can certainly understand that the thoughts and understanding present in this book come from the authoritative position. He himself had the conversations with the great and beautiful souls, Goddesses Saraswati and Lakshmi. So, sir, the stage is all yours. And I read your book last year. So the moment when I read about this book, obviously we came to know about this book through Patriji. And he reads lots of books and he says every book is a best book. So I thought, okay, this is also one such thing. But when I read across, it gave me a different a sensation, I can say. Rather than a feeling, I got a sensation. Whoever can relate yourself to that book can surely connect to the feminine energies. And again, in one of the previous sessions, we also came across that feminine energies is not something with the female or ladies. So we are going to know about that also through him today. So, sir, a little more introduction about you and about the book so we can travel to today's topic, sir.
Thank you. Thank you so much for the wonderful introduction, and thank you for this great opportunity on Independence Day, special day for us, after so many hundreds of years of rule by foreigners, and then they became part of us, of course. That's the Indian, the Hindu spirit, the secular spirit, to make everything that comes a part of itself. So thank you for this wonderful opportunity and for organizing these swadhyayas, which are amazing. Yeah, you're doing once a week. And also I want to acknowledge Brahmashri Patriji, is, his amazing ways he's introduced this book on this path. So, and amazing work he's doing. So want to acknowledge that. So let's talk about inner freedom. To know inner freedom, you have to know the difference. What is outer freedom? So what is inner freedom? What is outer freedom? Of course, these are also concepts. In the end, all freedom becomes one freedom. But what is inner and outer? Can that help us? So we celebrate the Independence Day. That definitely has part of outer freedom. You were, for so many hundreds of years, your minds and bodies were controlled. You had to live in a certain way. There was a particular ruler, and not that that disappears. Even in a democracy, that remains. That's a problem of patriarchy, not so much a problem of whether it's a dictatorship or autocracy or, particular kind of government. All of them are patriarchal. So that started 5,000 years ago. So even though we got our freedom in 1947 on August 15th, and we're celebrating that, it was a big step forward. Still, that is only a part of freedom, because then came democracy. And with democracy also, we still had patriarchy. We still had the same kind of thinking. We were freed at some level, but that inner freedom, freedom to be, freedom to think, freedom that comes from the soul, that freedom is not so much about the outer reality. You can live in a prison and you can get enlightened. In fact, prisons are great places for enlightenment. If you think about it, if the prison is such that your basic needs are met and you don't have to work too hard, then you're getting fed, you've got a solitary room, and I'm assuming prison conditions are good, which they're often not. But suppose they're good, then you can meditate and grow. And many of the spiritual programs that many spiritual institutions do, they are actually done in prison, and prisoners change very fast. They go from aggression to more compassionate behavior. So what is freedom then? If you can have this inner freedom happen in the prison also, and a lot of people don't feel that inner freedom even outside the prison. They become prisoners of a lot of wealth. So you made some initial wealth because you had the security need, and then you increased it, and then you felt even more free. But then at some point, there was an attachment. You became attached to just creating more wealth and more wealth. For what? Was that making you more happy, more free? Was it? Or did it become an attachment? If it became an attachment to your ego, to your social standing and all of that is in the mind. It's nothing to do with the body. A billionaire cannot have a million bodies to enjoy life. They still get only one body, right? And it depends how much you take care of your body. If you're too busy making the money and you get sick, and then you get some diseases, then you cannot even be in your body. So what is inner freedom? What is true freedom? Of course, answers have been given by, enlightened masters and gods and, Buddhas for a long time. But let's see a little bit more perspective from the divine feminine point of view. What is inner freedom? So you can think of, levels of consciousness as is in the book, Thousand Seeds of Joy. There are actually many gradations of consciousness, probably hundreds or thousands. But Saraswati ji divided them into 4. Just for, it makes it simple, and sometimes you need some simplicity also and some rigor also to walk a path. If you make it too complicated, we get lost, right? And we mean the thinking, emoting mind by that. We don't mean the empty mind. When we say mind, we mean, the continuously thinking, emotional mind. Then you have the body, the physical body. Then you have the soul. All spiritual paths agree there is something invisible in us, that life force that comes with some degree of individuation, which we call soul. So soul is not completely one with the higher self or God. So that's why we call it soul, because there's some degree of individuation. And then there is higher self. And by higher self, we mean when we become completely one with all souls, all higher selves, this oneness completely arises in us. You can think maybe of another level, which is source, which is where all the higher selves came from, or you can say higher self is the source. It doesn't matter. At that level, it's not going to matter so much whether you call it this way, that way. So you can think of it as the God self, the source self. So those are the 4 levels. You existing as mind in your ego, then you existing in your body, you existing as a soul, and is existing as a God self, Buddha self, higher self. So freedom has to be understood from the point of view of which level of consciousness you're in. If you are in the mind consciousness, it's very much outer freedom. People think mind is more inside than the body. That body is outside, mind is inside. Saraswati ji changes this. She says, no, mind is the most dense. The most away you are from yourself is when you're just in the mind. If you're in the body, you are a little bit more going inside. If you're just living in the mind, you are very much in the superficial outer world. What do people think of me? All kinds of judgments, all kinds of beliefs, all kinds of expectations, all kinds of perspectives, narrow perspectives, all kinds of identities. I am this, I am that, I'm a Hindu, I'm a Muslim, I'm an Indian, I'm this, whatever. I'm a male, female, all these identities. All of these are playing out in the mind, and they keep you in the outer world. So mind is more outer than body. Body is going inward. In fact, body is your door to the soul. That's why when we do Anapanasati meditation, being spread so nicely by Brahmashri Patriji, which is one of the most beautiful forms of meditation that Buddha preached everywhere he went. It was one of his favorite meditations. When you do that, you start going more in the body. Because breath will connect you more to the body. And when you put your attention on breathing, thoughts have to slow down. You don't reject thinking, but you just keep your attention on the breath. And if the thoughts come, let them come. Again, keep your attention on breathing and let the thoughts come. And as that happens, thinking slows down. And as that thinking slows down, you get more in the body. That is why you have such experiences, the exalted experiences. I feel the bliss and happiness, something coming from inside, gives you a taste of that inner freedom. But of course, mind is very clever. As soon as you have that first experience like that, the mind wants to jump in. This meditation was better than yesterday's, or that other experience I had 2 weeks ago. This was the best one I had. Then you want to tell other people, oh, I went into such bliss. The ego wants to get a little bit more out of it. And then you start losing the experience, because the more you talk about it, the more you lose it. So mind will always be chasing you even when you're having spiritual experiences. That is why Buddha would say, just observe and let it go. Don't get attached to even spiritual experiences. They're happening, they will happen, but let it go, because once you get attached, you close the doors for even vaster experiences. So don't get attached to, a little spiritual experience you had and you just are wanting that. Just let it go. Don't be attached to it. Just go back to the practice. So there is mind, which is the most outer way of being. That's really living in, even I did not say the word perception. But even the word perception, as Saraswati ji says, even that is different. A child's perception is different than a person who's had a life of pain, and they get older. All of us have suffering, and by the time we get in our 60s, 70s, many people have not made peace with their lives, and so how they perceive the world, cold, dark, and gray, and how a young child perceives the world is different, because the mind is infecting how you see, how you hear, how you use your senses. So even perception gets affected. So perceptions, are they pure? Are they without the mind? And then all of these other, what they're called thought forms, which are, things like judgments, beliefs, expectations, even intentions. You can have a hidden intention. You say, I want to do all this spiritual work. I am so spiritual, I'm so devoted. But really it's a need for the ego to get attention. That people look at me like a spiritual guru, right? That can happen. Happens to many people. So even that hidden intention, why are you doing something? Are you really feeling the love, the compassion, and you want to spread the knowledge? Or is there some attachment? And it's going to happen to everybody because the mind is in everybody. So everybody's going to go through that process, but the main thing is to see that process and to remove the attachment. So that hidden intention comes. So, we're going from perceptions to judgments to beliefs to expectations, intentions, perspectives. Your perspectives can be very, very different. Your mind perspective as growing up in one culture will be very different from another culture. Anything you can take, how people dress, what kind of clothes they wear, how much of their body is showing, all of these, your perspective will depend upon where you grew up. What religion is better, what foods are better for you. To the extent even certain simple things like, eating a vegetarian diet based on a lot of scientific evidence, even that gets affected by your perspective. You grow up in another culture where you've not seen that. So your perspective is, no, meat must be good for you. You need all that protein. Just because you grew up in a culture, so your perspective changes. So you have to question that. Is that scientific? What does science say about it? So all the way perspective and then identities. We get really attached to identities. People feel pride when the national anthem goes on, because I'm Indian. Americans will feel pride when their national anthem goes on. I'm American. We'll feel pride. We have never played cricket in our life, but we'll feel pride because the Indian cricket team won. Because identity, we're Indian, right? So, well, those Pakistani cricket team players also have families. They also feel the same joy when they win, right? It's not that we feel the joy, they also feel the joy, right? So if they win, we should celebrate their joy also. Why not? It's just a game, right? So next time you watch cricket and Pakistan wins, celebrate. That'll give you a taste of inner freedom. Because why be attached to any identity? Those cricket players have nothing to do with politics. They're just simple cricket players, right? We're not talking about politics and this and that. So how to drop the identity of even, the most tribal identity is that I belong to this caste and tribe. Then the identity is that I belong to, you can have an identity. I belong to Bombay. I'm a Bombayite. I'm a Delhiite. That kind of identity. Then there is an identity. I'm Indian. Keep dropping. There's even an identity that I'm human. That's at least better than being Indian. So be human. Say I'm a human. But if you're really Buddha, you would not even say that. You would say I'm just a living being, because you would have respect for all life. And you will say, what is so special about being human? Even the dogs are having a life, you got to respect them too. So you are just life. That's even a finer identity, more wholesome identity. And beyond life, you just become everything, because even matter is conscious. Matter also has consciousness. Everything is alive. So beyond life, you go beyond life and no life, which is everything is alive. You become so deep, and that's your higher self. So, identities, any of these things that I've talked about, these thought forms, any of them can be very narrow, or they can be more inclusive, and they get bigger and bigger and bigger. So identities can get bigger and bigger and bigger. The bigger you make them, more free you are. Of course, the first time you celebrate, let's say, another country winning cricket, and you really say, no, I got to celebrate this, it's not natural. You will feel uncomfortable. But just visualize their families, their joy, and say joy is joy. And just celebrate that also. So just celebrate joy every time. If you're in business and your competitor wins, you gave it a good fight, but if they won, celebrate their joy. Nothing wrong with that. That's the way of inner freedom, to always surrender to soul feelings. So what we talked about was mind going all the way from, perception, judgment, then you've got beliefs and expectations, intentions, perspectives, identities, all of these forms is all mind, mind. So notice that, and are these narrow, are these wide? And if they're too narrow, if your expectations are too narrow, a narrow expectation will be that my daughter should become an engineer or CEO of this company. That's a little more narrow expectation. Make it a little wider, which would be my daughter should live a happy life. Make it even wider. My daughter should live a very happy life and maybe have a lot of compassion for the world. Anything, you can just go on expanding and make your expectation an expectation that unifies everything. This is another way to dissolve the mind. Take these thought forms, which are all in the outer world, because that is where you're stuck, and expand them into, more inclusiveness. If you take something else like a judgment, you judge. Some people have very parochial judgments that, somebody might say Christians are better than Muslims, or Muslims are better than Hindus, or Hindus are better than Muslims. These are very, very narrow judgments. So you need to go beyond the narrow judgments. See that it's humans, not every Muslim or every Christian or every Hindu is where you admire them, and not each one of them is where you hate them. There are good people everywhere, bad people everywhere. So drop these are, I don't even think we should bring up these judgments. I don't think most people here in these meditation groups like PSSM don't have these kind of judgments, but I'm just giving examples that such judgments exist. But you might have more subtle judgments. What are these subtle judgments? That somebody's meditation experience is better than mine. They talk about so much bliss and I don't experience anything. Now, these are judgments, right? So we have to drop these judgments. There's a bigger perspective in which it is very good that you're not feeling anything, because your soul did not come on this earth to learn about bliss. The soul already had enough bliss. Your God self had plenty of bliss. The God self or the soul came to experience what it is not, to get a taste of what it is not to be that, so that it can expand even more, so that it can help other beings in other universes, because then you know what it is, what it feels to be not what you are. So we really came to experience in this Kali Yuga what we're not. So if you're having the experience of what you're not, you're accomplishing what your soul desired to do. So you're not feeling the bliss right now because that's what you came to experience, the contrast, what we're not. But fortunately, most of us are now rising back. We've experienced enough contrast. Life after life after life, you've got so many lifetimes of suffering that many of us are ready now, ready to now give up. We are done with soul experiencing so much contrast, and now we're rising back. That's what the goddesses say. That's why the goddesses are now coming together, adding a lot of energy so that we can rise back. So because of these judgments that come in our mind, we again get caught up. So expand your judgment. That even other meditators have experiences like, everybody thinks that everybody else is having a great experience, but everybody's thinking that. So it's not that everybody's all the time in this blissful state. Everybody goes through a little bit of mind, and then they dissolve. So feel that unity. We're all in the same place. Don't judge. Don't compare. Just stay with your practice, with your breath. So this is a more subtle example of judgment. A more gross example is where you judge things like, I'm Indian, they're Pakistani, all of that, that goes on in our head, which best thing to do there is, see everything as life and drop those judgments and drop subtle judgments also and make them more unifying. One of the most unifying judgments is every human is suffering in this world. And all desire an end to their suffering. When you see it like that, even criminals, everybody, rich people, good people, everybody in this human life is suffering. This is what Buddha said. All are suffering and all desire an end to their suffering. This is one of the most fundamental truths. This is also a judgment because we've judged. Not everybody all the time is suffering, right? So we're kind of judging, right? But it's a better judgment than comparing people, because there is some suffering in everybody and they're all desiring to end that suffering. So it's a more unifying judgment. So even in all of these, mental thought forms, there's a way to get more freedom by not sticking to the narrowness and expanding them. Expand your expectations for your children. Expand your judgments that it happens to everybody and really see that. See very deeply, it does happen to everybody. If you think Bill Gates does not suffer, go a little deeper in his life and you'll find maybe he suffers too. Just because he's got $80 billion or whatever doesn't mean he does not suffer. Just look a little deeper and you'll find that in everybody. So all of these thought forms which are mentioned in the book, they create your ego. They're all attached to your ego. Your judgments are attached to your ego. Your expectations are attached to your ego. Your intentions are attached to your ego. Your identities are attached to your ego. Your perspectives are attached to your ego. It all circles around the ego. Ego is like the dark sun, like planets move around the sun. So ego, like everything revolves around ego. And that's why there is no inner freedom, because we're trapped. We're trapped by these thought forms that all are, circling the ego all the time. Like how many thoughts we have in the day which are about our ego self. We look in the mirror, how do I look today? We take our weight, how much do I weigh today? It's all like so much of it is centered for many people around themselves. So many thought forms. What do people think about me? Will I get a promotion? Am I making enough money? It's all very driven around this. So that is why when we do Anapanasati or any other kind of meditation, we go beyond this continuous self-occupation, continuous self-thinking. And that is dropping the ego. But what we're saying here is that there are other ways. There are other ways of inquiry. There are paths which are based on just meditation. And then sometimes what happens is a little inquiry. That inquiry can help give you insights. So it all begins with some question. Inquiry will begin with a question. And this path is the path of freedom. So you ask yourself, is this the right expectation? This is the right judgment? Anything that you do, ask yourself, do I really have to be limited to this judgment, this expectation, this perspective? Can I drop it? I'll give an example. I was walking on a street in my town. The name is Amherst in Massachusetts in the US. This was many years ago. And I suddenly had this thought, how do I even know that something like this America exists, in the sense it's a mental construct? We've made it up. Humans have made it up, right? These trees don't know that I live in America. For the trees, it's just trees, it's just the earth, right? So I said, I gotta drop this idea that I'm even living in a particular country, because that affects my mind. So suddenly that happened, and boom, an insight happened, and I just opened up and I just dropped that whole identity that I am living in another country or any place different. I'm just living. So the insight came, I'm just on earth. And suddenly I saw the same trees and the same pond and the same street, completely dropping the idea that I belong to a particular country or this is a particular country. Just drop that idea and all became more beautiful. The trees were connecting deeper because this idea is somewhere in the unconscious, in another country that we're in this country, but that idea will stop you from connecting. It's a you can call it a belief perspective. It's a narrow one. Society happens, there cannot be countries, because countries are just artificial constructs. They divide us. They, separate our connection from each other. So even these small things will affect you. So question everything. Questioning is a part of freedom, but with a balance. Always a middle way. Like in our book, there's a little instance where I ask, because, the spiritual guru Krishnamurti was very influential in my life. So I asked Lakshmiji about him. And he always spoke about questioning, about freedom. He might even have a book with that name, Inner Freedom, maybe, or something with freedom. Freedom from the known, I think that's the name of the book. But he only talked about the mind and questioning and questioning the known and all of that. So we need a balance. The balance is that questioning you do when you do. There's a time for that. But then there's a time to just go in the body by breathing. That time you're not questioning. You're not questioning your breath. You're just being with the breath. So you have to know when to question, when to surrender. When to question, when to surrender. So doubt and faith both are needed. They're like your two legs. You need to doubt your beliefs so that you can go beyond them. But you need to have faith in your body, your soul, so that you can surrender. So some enlightened masters, they sometimes will go only on one path and they will say, oh, no, you don't need faith and all of this is not needed. This is all religion and all of that. But knowing how to use both is what will give you the true freedom, because then you can run faster. With one leg, you can only walk so fast. But if you know how to use doubt and how to use faith, that's the divine feminine path. Feminine path includes, in a way, all paths. because it doesn't deny anything. Even doubting is a path. So, you question. The whole book is question answers. But then there's tremendous faith in this path. Faith in the body and the soul. Knowing where to use faith is so important. So, if you look deeply where we are going with inner freedom, with the 4 levels of consciousness, mind, body, soul, and higher self, mind is where we are stuck. And that is outer freedom. That's the freedom of the self, freedom of the ego. I can do whatever I want. I can make as much money I want. I am better than everybody. I am this, So, which is spread everywhere. And no one represents that more than even some of our politicians, They are so, me. That focus on me. That is outer freedom. Inner freedom starts moving to the body, to the soul, and the higher self. And body, soul, higher self are the path of faith. Mind is where you question narrow beliefs, narrow expectations, narrow perspectives, and have faith in the more expansive beliefs, more expansive expectations. Have faith over there. Question the narrow, have faith in the wider. And if you do that, then the path starts opening up. If you have faith in the narrow and question the wider elements of consciousness, then you have a problem. So a lot of scientists have a problem because they have a lot of faith in their theory. They're scientists and they reduce everything. It's reductionism, meaning that just because they found some correlation, like every time we have a sorrowful thought, let's say one part of brain lights up when you've got electrodes on you. So they think because they have noticed that, they know what sorrow is. Sorrow is this area of brain lighting up. That is sorrow, but that is not sorrow. Sorrow is something that you have to experience it. You have to go through it. That is sorrow. Sorrow is not a correlation. Just because the thought moved in a certain way and you noted that down and you called it science, and now you say we know everything. We have faith in this, electrode model of sorrow. That is what sorrow is, because every time somebody is in sorrow, we notice that this brain area lights up. So then you say that is what science is, but that is not the experience. That is just a correlation. It's a correlation between having sorrow and that area of the brain. That correlation may fall apart someday because there might be another area of brain that also has sorrow, which you just forgot to look at. So science is very narrow. It looks at certain phenomena, makes correlations, and calls it knowledge. And that is, some scientists have a problem with believing in higher realms, soul, or having that meditative experience. They don't even want to go there. You tell them, many people, that we just breathe, and they'll just laugh at you and they'll go, okay, you just breathe, I also breathe. And that's the end of it. So because they just want to use their mind to analyze everything and they don't want to surrender. That's a narrow perspective. So they don't have much freedom. These scientists don't have much freedom because they're stuck. They never tasted what thousands of people in PSSM taste daily, which is when they go into Anapanasati, they have these amazing experiences. They'll never taste that because they never surrendered to the wider perspective that there's something beyond just the mental correlations, that this is sorrow, this is that, everything is not just knowledge. You have to experience. So mind is a very, it traps a lot of people into beliefs, judgments, all of these things. So question these narrow beliefs. I'm not saying I know the answer. I'm just saying question it. Find out the answer for yourself. Don't take anybody's answer. Don't take our book as the answer. Nobody has the answer. It's the questioning mind. When it is used properly, it will help you. But don't make your whole life about questioning. A lot of followers of Krishnamurti, they walk around like intellectuals. A lot of his followers, and they're always questioning everything, and they're just in the head. and they don't surrender to body, faith, mantras, chanting, dancing, any of those things, which will make you feel free. Because it's all about the head, it's all about questioning. So don't become too narrow about just questioning also. Like that has also got its place. So you have to question your narrow thought forms. That's all we're saying. Beyond that, we surrender to the body, which is now the next form of consciousness. So let's talk, we've talked enough about the mind. Now let's talk about the body. Then we'll talk about the soul and higher self. So what is body freedom? What is the inner freedom that you feel with the body? If you think about it, what is it to be free in a body? Have you ever asked that here? What is that freedom in the body? Ask that question, because asking questions is always gets you, what would that feel like? Like even when you're sitting, sometimes you notice that you don't even notice that you're sitting uncomfortably. And then you realize after some time, oh, I need to move my body, and then you become comfortable. But you were sitting uncomfortably for a while, because you were too much in the head. That is why it all begins with sitting, just simply sitting and breathing. Because as you do that, you'll start feeling which area of my body is feeling uncomfortable. You'll move your position, you'll get more aligned, sit straighter. Are you sitting like hunchback? Does that really give you freedom? Or, keeping your body a little straighter will give you more freedom. What gives you freedom with the body? So posture is important. Surrendering to a practice like breathing, like yoga, that can give you a lot of freedom. Do some yoga, like half an hour of yoga, 45 minutes of yoga, or have a more vigorous practice. And a lot of yogis will tell you, including, a lot of friends I know and people I know, that just that 45 minutes of yoga gets them so grounded in the body. Body starts feeling lighter, freer. It just starts feeling more free. That. So what gives body the freedom? Posture, some exercise, yoga. Then what about eating? You eat certain kind of foods, you feel free, and you eat other kinds of foods and you feel imprisoned by uncomfortableness. So how you eat, having enough greens and balanced diet, all of that, eating on right time. In Buddhism, they say, what is enlightenment? Enlightenment is you eat when you're hungry and you sleep when you're tired, when you're sleepy. That's enlightenment. Because a lot of people cannot do that. They eat when they're too stressed, because that's a relief from the stress. Go open the fridge and eat one more something, because that's a stress buster. They're using it for that. The stomach doesn't need it. Or make another cup of tea, or another coffee, to fill something. Or with addictions, people will smoke cigarettes or have drugs or whatever. Why do they do that? They are using the body, but they're filling up their mind. Mind is stressed, and that's a way to get the relief. So to know this, that's not body freedom, that is just mind freedom. If you can smoke anytime, if you can drink anytime, is the body feeling better when you have, some alcohol and you become a little drowsy? Is the body really feeling better? Or is the mind now just not so disturbed because, that helped your mind a little bit? And that's what's feeling better. So we are often using the body to give some peace to the mind. Mind is not free. And mind is not free because of those thought forms, which we've already talked about. So to surrender to some practices as much as you can do, a little better eating, green leafy vegetables, or exercise, All of that will give you body freedom. And then body through breath in yoga becomes a way to start connecting with the soul. The body opens the door to the soul. Mind does not. Mind can with some questioning. If you drop the narrow part of the mind with some questioning, then the mind can become a little free and you can be open to the body and soul. So once you start feeling that freedom and connection with the soul, then what is the soul freedom? That's the most important part of the goddess messages. That's the most important part of the path of goddesses, divine feminine. To really start living the soul. What is that? What is this invisible life, energy that lives through us, that once it is gone, the body is dead? And this is where you have to go with leaps of faith. Just know you're infinite. Just know that you have been here forever. Soul never dies. Just go with tremendous faith. As you go with that, that faith itself starts opening the doors to become the soul. This is why the path of faith is not that unscientific. You have to try it first. Just to say faith is unscientific doesn't make sense. But, first try having faith. See what experiences you have. Then decide whether it is scientific or not scientific to have faith. Again, we're not saying we just go one way. Don't become just like a religious preacher and stop having doubts. Doubt is, you need both legs. You need that leg of doubt also that we already talked about. But then once you've done that with the mind, when it comes to soul, feel the energy. When you walk in the morning or whenever you go for a walk like you're for the first time seeing everything around you. Connect with everything. Like you just walk by a tree, a living being. It was a profound experience, but you just kind of just walk by, like feel it, Just know that you can feel it, Take some deep breaths, engage your senses fully. Listen to the most beautiful sounds nature makes. The sounds of cricket and sounds of ruffling leaves. And these sounds, we've known them for eons. The soul has been around for a long time. It has known the sound of the wind and the leaves and all of that. And it knew how to connect, So just surrender to the sounds, to the sights, to the vision, and give full attention on the walk. Don't be so obsessed with I have to walk fast so that I get exercise. Yeah, you need to walk at a good pace, but be open to what's happening, the magic. And as you surrender to the senses, to the sounds, you make the connection and you know that your soul is infinite. You connect with everything directly, you'll start having experiences. If you go deep in meditation and sit next to a tree, who knows? You'll start maybe even talking to the tree someday. Because you had the faith to take the tree as a life form and to honor it and to really surrender to the energy. That faith opened up the door. So it's, there's a word called endogenous. So just because you did that, so it opened up. So this is where the scientific thinking fails, because they never meditate, they never live like this, and then they go, this doesn't exist. Well, this will start existing if you start living like this. If you start energizing yourself with, on your walks, with the energy, with all the senses, and honor life, then you will start feeling the soul energy. So feel the soul energy in many ways, and one of the highest ways is to feel with these 54 soul feelings in the book, which is in the second chapter. So these soul feelings are different from emotions. Emotions are surrounding your ego. Like, I feel pride. India won again. I feel pride. We won the cricket match. That's a very much of an emotional joy. It's not like the pure joy. Pure joy is if Pakistan won and you go, oh my God, their family must be so happy, these players. If you can feel that joy, you're coming closer to purity of joy because it's not connected to your mind. It's just joy, you feel joy. So a lot of us feel this emotional joy with our children, our this, our that. But this true unconditional joy that you can feel with the trees, they are with animals, with little babies. Because you look at a little baby, look at their eyes, they're watching like a sun at you. It's so intensely their eyes are looking at you. When you've seen these little babies, that means they're so aware, so present. They're so alive to the world that they are feeling that soul. Trees are feeling that soul. Animals are feeling that soul because animals are also in total surrender. We get in our head, in the mind, so we stop feeling the soul. So surrender to the nature, sensations, and surrender with a lot of joy. And there are many soul feelings: joy, love, compassion, gratitude, freedom, peace, forgiveness, patience. It just goes on the list. So surrender to these feelings, which are, or they can also be called states, which are states of a more expanded reality, which is your infinite soul. Because love is infinite in all directions. Joy is infinite. Remember, if you ever slept under the stars, either camping or on your terrace, when you were 6-year-old or 9-year-old, and you felt the amazing beauty of stars, and you felt that connection, which stops happening when we get older, that's joy, feeling that infinity. So soul is faith in the invisible, in these infinity, in infinite soul feelings. Once goddesses told me, you only have 10% faith. I said, what do you mean? I'm working with you all the time and I'm doing this and I really have faith in you. They say, yes. We didn't say 10% is a small amount of faith. 10% is a lot of faith. Most people don't have 10%. They're very little. Most of us are living with 1 or 2% faith. So at that time they said, you're 10%, that is actually good. But we want to tell you that how much more upside there is. If you start living with 100% faith, there's 90% more. When you live with 100% faith, you can walk on water. You literally can walk on water. That's what makes Jesus different from a normal human, because he is walking with 100% faith. 100% faith is living a miraculous reality. That happens only when you become like so enlightened. And then every intention you have becomes a reality. And you become so expanded that your intentions are always good. So that's when you come to this 100% faith reality. And this is where you become that soul, expanded soul. So that's freedom. Freedom is, can you imagine to live in 100% faith? How much freedom it is to walk on water or to be here and then suddenly you're there, all of that magical stuff that we read about in our scriptures. Like Sita could manifest, she lived in nature and she had a life of suffering. But by the time it came close to Rama finding her, she was getting enlightened. And when she was getting more enlightened, she could manifest fruits, Lakshmiji says. She would look at a tree and just visualize, and the tree would give her a fruit. Because trees have that power. And if connected to an enlightened person, they'll manifest it. So that amazing amount of inner freedom, like your soul is feeling totally free. It's just become energy. because it understands everything is energy, and energy is infinite. Even in a small atom, there's so much energy. If you knew with faith how to use energy, you can do anything. So that's another, totally another level of inner freedom. I mean, you've got mind freedom, which is, you know, controlling a few things, then body freedom, which is getting a taste of that exquisite life you can live. And then soul freedom is, just surrendering to your infinite nature. And the way is with soul feelings. The way is with connecting body and soul. And then the final one is the freedom of the higher self, the God self. So once you've attained soul freedom to that level, then you don't have to come back in material incarnation. You don't have to be reborn again and again. The path is done. And now you are free. You're free to serve as a compassionate Buddha in another universe, or a goddess, or a god, or whatever. The God self is free. And in that joy, it serves other universes. And it enlightens, because the suffering still exists in some places, in some universes. So that freedom is the freedom to create freedom for all sentient beings, all life forms. And the work continues, of course, and levels of enlightenment, they say, are even beyond and beyond. Beyond the God self is the God self, and it goes on ever expanding. So there are universes of universes. There are realms that we don't know about. So freedom keeps growing in that direction. So this is basically the whole thing, from outer freedom to inner freedom. Inner freedom is infinite. Outer freedom is limited. Inner freedom is from the self. Outer freedom is of the self. Inner freedom is where suffering ends. Outer freedom is where suffering just changes its forms. So that's what I have to say about inner freedom.
Thank you, sir. Thanks a lot for accepting an invitation and being here on the Pyramid Valley Weekend Wisdom session. I thank
Thank
you
you.
on behalf of Pyramid Valley Management and also on behalf of the participants who have been here. Thank you, sir.
Yeah, thank you everybody for coming here and spending this valuable. Goodbye. Namaste. Jai Devi Ma.